Imagine a whisper in the dark corridors of power, a name that chills the blood of seasoned investigators and rattles entire governments. He's a ghost in the global machine, a puppeteer pulling strings from secret locations, his influence stretching from the blood-soaked streets of Sweden to the volatile chessboard of Middle Eastern politics. This isn't just a gangster. This is Rawa Majid, the Kurdish Fox, a man accused of turning his criminal empire into a weapon for a pariah state, a fugitive whose actions now carry the weight of international terrorism. What happens when organized crime morphs into an instrument of war? They call him Kurdish Raven, the Kurdish Fox. A name that in Sweden and increasingly across Europe has become synonymous with a brutal wave of violence, sophisticated drug trafficking operations, and an almost mythical ability to elude justice. He is the alleged leader of Foxtrot, a criminal network that rose to the top of the Swedish underworld in the late 2010s, with ambitions of nothing less than total domination of the narcotics trade. But Foxtrot is more than just a drug cartel. It's an army of shadows, linked to countless shootings, bombings, and a reign of terror often executed by chillingly young recruits, some barely teenagers. The Swedish media portrays him as a powerful, elusive, and immensely wealthy figure, a phantom kingpin directing his bloody symphony from afar, always one step ahead. This elusiveness only fuels the legend, turning the Kurdish Fox into a symbol of a system struggling to contain a new breed of hyper-violent, internationally connected criminals. Rawa Majid's story doesn't begin in the opulent hideouts he would later command, but in Kermanshah, Iran, born in 1986 to Kurdish parents fleeing the ravages of the Iran-Iraq War. Barely a month old, he arrived in Sweden, his family seeking refuge and a new life in the peaceful city of Uppsala. But peace for young Rawa would prove to be a fleeting dream. The streets of Uppsala, meant to be a sanctuary, became his training ground. By 19, he was already on police ledgers. Theft, cigarette smuggling. These were the first rungs on a dark ladder. Soon, he escalated to more serious enterprises. Drug trafficking, the lifeblood of organized crime, and the violence that inevitably accompanies it. In 2010, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison for significant drug offenses, including handling cocaine imported from the Netherlands. It wasn't just a path chosen, it was a vortex, pulling him deeper with each passing year. The question lingers, was it the struggle of an immigrant existence, a thirst for something more, or a darkness that lay within? The late 2010s saw the birth of a new predator in Sweden's criminal ecosystem, the Foxtrot Network. With Rawa Majid allegedly at its helm, Foxtrot wasn't just another gang. It was an emerging empire built on narcotics, fear, and a chillingly corporate efficiency. Their goal was audacious: to become Sweden's primary distributor of illicit drugs. They were well organized, a major concern for law enforcement, with their ranks primarily composed of men aged 25 to 35, including Majid's own relatives. But the true horror of Foxtrot's methodology lay in its recruitment, often targeting vulnerable youths, sometimes with ADHD or from newly immigrated families, boys as young as 12, to carry out their violent bidding, shootings, bombings, contract killings. These young soldiers, often facing lighter sentences due to their age, became expendable pawns in Majid's bloody chess game. Foxtrot formed alliances with other established groups like the Bro Network and the Zero Network, expanding its reach and operational capacity, importing significant quantities of drugs from the Netherlands. This wasn't just crime, it was a calculated conquest. As Foxtrot's power grew, so did the blood feuds. Majid became embroiled in escalating conflicts with rival networks like the Dallin Gang and the notorious Bandidos. A mistaken identity murder outside the Bandidos' headquarters, a plot to kill their leader, a 17-year-old tasked with bombing their premises. The violence was relentless, a constant drumbeat of terror. But the most vicious war was the one that tore Foxtrot apart from within. A bitter personal dispute erupted between Majid and his former lieutenant, Ismail Abdo, also known as the Strawberry. This wasn't just business, it became a vendetta that shattered all unwritten rules of the underworld. In September 2023, a shocking act of brutality sent ripples of horror throughout Sweden. Ismail Abdo's mother, a woman in her 60s with no involvement in her son's world, was shot dead in her Uppsala home. 2 teenagers were arrested for the murder, believed to be an act of revenge ordered by Majid. The cycle of retaliation spun violently out of control. Majid's own mother-in-law narrowly survived an attempt on her life. Families, once untouchable, were now prime targets. Sweden, and even Turkey, where these leaders were hiding, became battlegrounds in a war with no honor, only bloodshed. As the heat intensified in Sweden, Rawa Majid became a phantom. In 2018, following a lengthy prison sentence and the murder of his cousin, Swedish authorities, perhaps seeing an opportunity to rid themselves of a problem, allowed him to leave the country despite being on parole. He found refuge in Turkey, and by 2020, despite being wanted by Interpol for serious drug offenses and murder planning, he managed to purchase Turkish citizenship through an investment program, a golden visa, that effectively shielded him from extradition to Sweden. He reportedly lived lavishly with a $2.1 million mansion in Marmaris and a luxury apartment in Istanbul, operating under the alias Miran Othman. Swedish attempts to capture him were frustrated. Intelligence was allegedly leaked from Turkish police to Foxtrot members. But the noose was tightening. In October 2023, Majid was reportedly detained by Iranian police near the Turkish border. This arrest, however, was not the end, but a terrifying new beginning. Reports soon surfaced, corroborated by intelligence agencies like Mossad, that Majid hadn't just been caught, he'd been recruited. Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security (MOIS), or the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps (IRGC), allegedly co-opted the Kurdish Fox, turning his Foxtrot network into a proxy force. Their new targets? Israeli and Jewish interests across Europe. An attempted bombing outside the Israeli embassy in Stockholm in January 2024, grenade attacks near the Israeli embassy in Copenhagen in October 2024, Foxtrot's fingerprints were allegedly all over them, acting on Tehran's orders. The Kurdish Fox, once a street-level crime lord, had allegedly graduated to an international mercenary, a pawn in a shadowy geopolitical game. He is now reportedly living under IRGC protection in Iran, traveling between Iran and Afghanistan to conduct operations. The Kurdish Fox's alleged alliance with the Iranian regime catapulted him onto the radar of global superpowers. In March 2025, the United States Treasury Department slapped heavy sanctions on Rawa Majid and the Foxtrot Network, designating them as a transnational criminal organization. The U.S. cited not only their vast drug trafficking operations, contract killings, and arms dealing, but explicitly their role in carrying out attacks against Israeli and Jewish targets in Europe on behalf of Iran. A month later, in April 2025, the United Kingdom followed suit, imposing its own sanctions, asset freezes, travel bans. The message was clear. The world was watching, and the impunity Majid had enjoyed was eroding. These weren't just symbolic gestures. They were designed to cripple Foxtrot's financial operations, isolate Majid, and send a signal to any state harboring him that there would be consequences. Yet, despite being one of Sweden's most wanted, the subject of an Interpol red notice, and now a globally sanctioned individual, Rawa Majid, the Kurdish Fox, remains a fugitive, reportedly still under Iran's protection. Rawa Majid, the Kurdish Fox. From the streets of Uppsala to the tangled web of international espionage and terrorism. His story is a chilling testament to the evolution of crime in the 21st century. more violent, more global, and dangerously intertwined with the agendas of nations. As sanctions tighten and the manhunt continues, his network, though battered, still casts a long, dark shadow. Has the fox truly been cornered? Or is he merely waiting, a phantom in the service of new masters, ready to unleash fresh chaos upon a world already teetering on the brink? The legacy of his violence endures, and the unsettling truth remains. In the global game of shadows, there are always more foxes waiting.